episode 80 of Toke Signals TV, where we bring you the biggest in cannabis and hemp news stories every week. I'm Steve Elliott, the editor at tokesignals.com, and I'll be guiding you through the news. First of all, let's look at some pretty flowers. Have some afgoo, indica dominant here for you. Happens to be my favorite medicinal strain. It addresses my symptom set very well, and not only that, but it's quite delicious tasting and beautiful to look at. I found this at Green Thumb Silverdale, and it was at the bargain rate of $8 a gram. Let's do the news now, shall we? Lots of big news this week coming from the United States, where the situation is developing fast on the ground as we approach April 20th, our 420 holiday. Happy 420, everyone. In the United States, a new poll finds that 53% of Americans now support legalizing marijuana. This poll from Pew Research Center finds that 44% are opposed, but as recently as only 2006, just 32% supported legalization, while nearly twice as many, 60%, were opposed, according to Pew. Now, crucially, this poll finds that people are much more likely to change their minds from opposing legalization to supporting it than vice versa. Among the general public, 21% of people support legalization now, but once opposed it. In contrast, just 7% of people used to support legalization, but now oppose it. Millennials, the millennial generation, 18 to 34 years old, they lead the change with 68% in favor of marijuana legalization. But across all generations, with the exception of the silent generation, ages 70 and above, support for legal cannabis has risen sharply over the past decade. The more that people learn about marijuana and look at the benefits of legalization, the more likely they are to support reform, said Tom Angel of Marijuana Majority. Our opponents sure do have a lot to say about what they see as the benefits of continuing prohibition, but voters don't want to hear it. The most frequently mentioned reasons for supporting marijuana legalization are its medical benefits, 41%, and the belief that cannabis is no worse than other drugs, 36%, with many specifically mentioning they think pot is no more dangerous than alcohol or tobacco. Majorities of black people, 58%, and white people, 55%, favor legalization, compared with just 40% of Hispanics. Men with 57% in favor are more likely to support legalization than women at 49%. Nearly 6 in 10 Democrats at 59% favor legalizing cannabis, as do 58% of independents. Meanwhile, just 39% of Republicans have gotten on board. A majority of Americans, 59%, say that the federal government should not enforce marijuana prohibition in states that allow cannabis use. 37% say federal law should be enforced. These views are unchanged since this question was first asked 2 years ago. Overall, 49% said they've tried pot, while 51% said they've never done so. In 2003, just 38% said they had tried marijuana, with 61% saying no. Men at 56% are more likely than women, 41%, to say they've tried marijuana. About 1 in 4 of those who've tried pot, 12% of the public overall, say they've used it in the past year. About half of whites, 52%, and blacks, 50%, say they've tried cannabis. Among Hispanics, just 36% say they've tried marijuana, while 63% say they haven't. A majority of those who say marijuana should be legal say they've tried it before, 65%. 34% of those who support legalization said they've never tried weed. Tellingly, among those who say marijuana should be illegal, just 29% have tried it, while 71% have not. Legalization isn't just some liberal trend on the coasts, Angel told Hemp News. It's a mainstream issue with majority voter support in crucial states that national politicians need to win. Presidential candidates would do well to start counting the cannabis constituency instead of running away from us, Angel said. Also in the United States this week, our president apparently agrees with the majority of Americans. President Obama declared full support for medical marijuana. He'll state his full support for medical marijuana in a CNN special to be aired on Sunday. The TV special Weed 3 features CNN chief medical correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta, a neurosurgeon who changed his mind and began supporting medical cannabis after reviewing the evidence. The third installment of Weed has Dr. Gupta delving into the politics of medical marijuana research, including an interview with President Obama. In addition to supporting medicinal cannabis, the president advocates for alternative models of drug abuse treatment which don't involve imprisonment. The president had previously predicted that more states will legalize recreational cannabis and has confirmed that although marijuana is still illegal under federal law, the feds won't interfere in states as states implement legalization. Gupta and Obama briefly discussed the recent bill on the Senate floor introduced by Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. This bill would reschedule cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2 under federal law. Gupta asked if Obama supports Booker's bill. I think I'd have to take a look at the details, but I'm on record as saying that not only do I think carefully prescribed medical use of marijuana may in fact be appropriate, and we should follow the science as opposed to ideology on this issue, but I'm also on record as saying that the more we treat some of these issues related to drug abuse from a public health model, and not just from an incarceration model, the better off we're going to be, the president responded. Obama pointed to declining usage rates of tobacco among American teens as an example of how effective public health education models can be, all without the threat of jail sentences. One of the great victories of this country has been our ability to reduce incidences of smoking, increase the incidences of seatbelt use, Obama said to Gupta. We save tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives every single year. We didn't throw anybody in jail. We just made sure that they were well informed, and if somebody has an addiction, we made sure that we made it easy for them to get help, the president said. In late February, Obama pointed out that states have the option of discouraging marijuana in the same way public health models have reduced tobacco use, through education, as opposed to a punitive approach which incarcerates nonviolent drug offenders. If the president means what he says about following science, then there's no question he should support legislation to move marijuana out of Schedule 1, a category that's supposed to be reserved for substances with no medical value, said Tom Angel, chairman of Marijuana Majority. All these signs of progress, apparently some people didn't get the memo. Governor Chris Christie has promised to crack down on marijuana if elected president. If you want to see a massive cannabis crackdown in the United States, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is your guy. Christie made an appearance on the Hugh Hewitt radio show on Tuesday and claimed he will crack down on states that have legalized marijuana if he becomes president in the future. Marijuana is a gateway drug, Christie claimed, ignoring scientific studies showing otherwise. We have an enormous addiction problem in this country, and we need to send very clear leadership from the White House on down through federal law enforcement. Marijuana is an illegal drug under federal law, Christie said, and the state should not be permitted to sell it and profit from it. Asked by Hewitt if he would enforce federal marijuana prohibition in Washington, Colorado, and other states that legalize recreational cannabis, the governor responded, "Absolutely, I will crack down and not permit it." Christie's hardline stance might not prove very popular with voters. According to the latest results from Pew Research, as we saw, 53% of Americans favor marijuana legalization. Now, a separate poll has shown that the majority of voters in presidential swing states, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, approve of both medicinal and recreational cannabis, which means weed could become a major factor in the next presidential election. Apparently, eating yourself to death is acceptable, but a plant that cures and heals is bad, Washington State marijuana activist herbalist Lisa Little told Hemp News. A whopping 68% of millennials say cannabis should be legal, according to the recent poll. Also in the United States, a misstep. A spineless federal judge declined to remove marijuana from the Schedule 1 list. If you've ever doubted that the deck is stacked, you can safely lay those doubts to rest. A federal judge in California on Wednesday unexplainably declined to remove marijuana from a list of the most dangerous drugs, ignoring all evidence to the contrary. U.S. District Judge Kimberly Mueller issued the nonsensical ruling in response to a motion by defense lawyers to dismiss charges in a case the authorities claim involved a marijuana growing operation. Marijuana's classification as a Schedule 1 drug under the Uniform Controlled Substances Act means the U.S. federal government officially considers cannabis to be roughly on par with heroin, also on Schedule 1 in terms of danger. Schedule 1 drugs are considered to have no accepted medical uses and a high potential for abuse. It was the first time in decades that a federal judge seriously considered marijuana's classification. To rule that cannabis is a Schedule 1 controlled substance means ignoring the vast body of medical evidence that has accumulated in recent decades, including hundreds of clinical studies and thousands of patient testimonials. Mueller's move to hold a hearing last year to look at the issue is considered a significant step reflecting growing skepticism about federal marijuana laws, according to Sam Kamen, an expert on cannabis regulation at the University of Denver Stern College of Law. While this one came out the other way, what you see is a lot of momentum in changing federal marijuana law, according to Kamen. Judge Mueller claimed in a 15-minute hearing that she was initially prepared to grant the defense motion, but then decided from the facts of this one case that this is not the court and this is not the time, quote. She explained away her spineless and unscientific decision by claiming she decided it was up to Congress to change the law if it so wishes. Mueller said she'd issue a written ruling by the end of the week. It has been 45 years since Congress passed the Controlled Substances Act, Judge Mueller said, noting the landscape has changed since then. But while the courts are an independent branch of government, Judge Mueller said they aren't designed to act as makers of public policy. The judge didn't explain why that belief would prevent her from ruling according to the facts of the case, which clearly showed marijuana to be a useful medicine. Defense attorney Bill Bonham said the ruling was a letdown. I felt that the judge was leaning to grant the motion from our previous hearing, so I guess it's disappointing, he said. Mueller gave the defense team 3 weeks before a May 6th court hearing to set a trial date for the case. Defense attorneys had argued that marijuana is far less harmful than many legal drugs, and its classification as a Schedule 1 substance is arbitrary and violation of the Constitution. In Georgia this week, there is some progress as the governor signs a low-THC medical marijuana oil bill into law. Georgia Governor Nathan Deal on Thursday signed legislation immediately legalizing the use of low-THC medical marijuana oil to treat 8 serious medical conditions. The new law, sponsored in the Georgia House by State Representative Alan Peake, a Republican from Macon, makes it legal to possess up to 20 ounces of fluid cannabis oil. The catch is that oil can contain no more than 5% tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, the principal psychoactive component of cannabis, and also one of its chief medicinal components. Scientific research has shown that all the cannabinoids found in the marijuana plant, including THC and CBD, work best when used together. This phenomenon is known as the entourage effect. Georgia's new medical marijuana law is a slight improvement on the CBD-only laws passed by lawmakers in other conservative states because it makes it legal to use cannabis oil to treat patients with epilepsy and other seizure disorders, Lou Gehrig's disease, cancer, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, mitochondrial disease, Parkinson's disease, and sickle cell anemia. For the families enduring separation and patients suffering pain, the wait is finally over, Governor Deal said, his voice cracking. Now Georgia children and their families may return home while continuing to receive much-needed care. Patients such as Haley Cox, for whom this bill is named, and others suffering from debilitating conditions can now receive the treatment they need in the place where they belong, Georgia, Deal said. The governor then hugged Haley, 5, who has intractable epilepsy, and her mother, Janae Cox, who had moved to Colorado a few months ago, while husband and father Brian stayed back in Georgia. Mike Hopkins, 53, of Covington, Georgia, who came home from Colorado for the signing ceremony, said he's not willing to take a chance that his daughter, Michaela, might not be able to be treated with cannabis oil due to interference from Federal Transportation Security Administration officials at airports. 2 of Hopkins' children have died. We're going to stay in Colorado a while, Hopkins said. We just can't take the chance. Georgia should legalize in-state cultivation of cannabis to make the oil to remove any risk of interstate transportation, according to both Representative Peake, author of the bill, and medical marijuana patient advocates. In Washington state this week, bad news as the legislature okays gutting the medical marijuana program under legalization. The Washington legislature on Tuesday approved a bill essentially gutting the state's medical marijuana program, sending to the desk of Governor Jay Inslee a bill that eliminates medical cannabis dispensaries now that the state's recreational market is nominally in place. The Senate concurred with changes made to the bill in the House last week, then voted 41-8 to send it on to the governor for his expected signature. Republican Senator Ann Rivers of La Center claimed the state could no longer wait to reconcile the medical and recreational markets, effectively forcing patients to pay the much higher prices in recreational pot stores, where employees are forbidden to even mention the medicinal applications of cannabis. The reality is that we have a thriving illicit market, Rivers claimed, ignoring the fact that medical marijuana collectives have been legal in the state since 1998. It's essential that we shut them down, she said. But it was also essential that our patients had a clean supply and an adequate supply, Rivers said, in a statement that is dripping with irony, given the fact that her bill does neither. Among many other provisions, Senate Bill 5052 creates a database of patients. Now, oddly, recreational marijuana users don't have to be part of any database, and neither do, for instance, OxyContin users. This provision places medical marijuana patients alongside child molesters in having to register with the state. Changes made in the House, including making the registry voluntary rather than mandatory, as it was in the original Senate version, but unregistered patients won't be allowed to have the same amounts of cannabis or enjoy the tax breaks that registered patients will. Patients who enter into the database and have an authorization will be allowed to have 3 dry ounces of marijuana, 48 ounces of marijuana-infused solids, 216 ounces of liquid, such as cannabis-infused soda pop, and 21 grams of concentrates. Registered patients can also grow up to 6 plants at home unless authorized to grow more by a health professional. Patients who don't register but are considered qualified have the same limit as recreational marijuana users, that is, 1 ounce. Such patients will be allowed to grow up to 4 plants. Recreational marijuana store owners have complained about the competition represented by medical marijuana dispensaries, which usually have better products at lower prices. Rather than to up their own game, which admittedly would be difficult under the onerous bureaucratic regulations imposed by I-502, they chose to lobby the legislature to shut their competition down by casting dispensaries as dangerous, unregulated enterprises. SB 5052 also cracks down on collective gardens, eliminating the current structure starting July 1st, 2016, but allowing 4 patient cooperatives. These would be limited to 60 plants, and locations would have to be registered with the state and couldn't be within 1 mile of licensed I-502 recreational pot retailers. State registries understandably make patients nervous, as the current policy of the federal government to allow states to implement medical marijuana laws could change after the next election. SB 5052 renames the Washington State Liquor Control Board to the Liquor and Cannabis Board. The board will adopt a supposedly merit-based system for granting licenses to some existing collective gardens and dispensaries. Among the factors considered will be whether applicants previously operated a collective, had a business license, or paid business taxes. Preference will be given to applicants who already had applied for a recreational marijuana license prior to July 1st, 2014, with second priority going to those who worked for or owned a medical collective garden prior to January 1st, 2013. Senator Jean Cole Wells, Democrat of Seattle, said that while she agreed the medical and recreational system needed to be aligned, she voted no on this bill because I need to make that point for the patients. I'm worried about the patients who are dependent upon the places they know well, the senator said. We will punish those legislators who screwed us, but the first people we will go after are the 502 businesses who were responsible for convincing these crooked legislators to do this, said activist Steve Serich of the Cannabis Action Coalition. I will throw a party every time one of these businesses closes down, Serich said. We don't have to wait until the next election to screw the people who screwed the patients. We can start that right away, Serich said. I got a chance to interview former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura this week, and what an interview it was. Ventura said in this Tuesday interview that the patients of Washington State should stand up to efforts to shut down the medical marijuana community and call the taxation scheme of recreational legalization measure I-502 unfair and unworkable. I-502's heavy taxation, under which marijuana is taxed 25% at each stage of the process, growing, processing, and retail, plus regular sales taxes, particularly incensed the liberty-loving Ventura. It's ridiculous to have a special marijuana tax, said Ventura in an exclusive interview with Toke Signals. Marijuana should be taxed the same as anything else you buy. The fact that the heavy taxation and onerous bureaucracy imposed in Washington under I-502 results in prices roughly double or even triple black market street prices highlights the absurdity of overregulation. If people can get marijuana cheaper from the guy down the street where they've always gotten it, maybe that's where they should go to get it, Ventura said. There's no reason to pay insanely high taxes to give greedy politicians more spending money. According to Ventura, any legalization scheme which doesn't include the right to grow your own cannabis at home is little more than a money grab by politicians and their rich friends. That's nonsense, he said. You cannot let these people become the only source of marijuana. That's not legalization. Politicians enjoy spending your money, and you're being taken for a ride. Look at Colorado. That's how it should be. They are allowing home growing. Marijuana won't be legalized because it's the right thing to do. It'll be legalized because of the vast amounts of money that can be made, Ventura said. When enough politicians and the general public realize how much money is on the table, marijuana will become legal very quickly. Ventura is definitely the happiest guy I saw that day. Appearing tan and relaxed in a sleeveless tie-dyed t-shirt at his place in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, he splits his time between there and his home in Minnesota. Ventura said he didn't expect any real leadership in the 2016 presidential race from either the Republicans or the Democrats when it comes to the marijuana issue. You're not going to have either the Dem or the Repub nominee making a stand for marijuana legalization in 2016, Ventura flatly predicted. If you want that, I think you're going to have to look elsewhere. Now, does that mean that Ventura himself, 63 years old now, perhaps might not be tired of politics? Well, there's not really a place for me in any state legislature, Ventura told me. I'm a little too outspoken to ever be in that position. I've been mayor of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, and I've been governor, so really the only place left for me to run for at this point is president. And is that a possibility, Governor Ventura? Well, I've really been enjoying the peace and quiet, Ventura said with a laugh, but something keeps telling me that big changes are about to happen in American politics, and I wouldn't mind being a part of that. Should Ventura, the 38th governor of Minnesota from 1999 to 2003, decide to be a part of the 2016 presidential race, he'll wait until mid-2016 to throw his hat in the ring as a third-party candidate, he said. I'm going to wait until the little guys are out of the race, he said. I don't only want to have to run against the top two guys. My question to you and to the cannabis community is, will you guys support my candidacy financially if I decide to run for president, said Ventura, currently the host of a TV show called Off the Grid. The possible candidate then mentioned the physical toll being president has on anyone who takes the job. Bill Clinton's hair turned white while he was president, Ventura pointed out. Barack Obama will be completely white-haired before his term is up. What effect is that going to have on me? I don't have any hair, he said with a big laugh. When asked if he used cannabis either medically or recreationally, former Navy SEAL Ventura said, "Are you kidding? I grew up in the 60s. I've tried it, I'll put it that way," he said with a smile. I remember one Jimi Hendrix concert in 1970. Some of the best pot I ever smoked, and you didn't even have to be high when you showed up, he said. It would be passed to you up and down the line, and the crowd was nice, mellow, and peaceful. Marijuana is to rock and roll what beer is to baseball, Ventura said. If you took away the beer from a baseball game, you'd have some very unhappy fans in the stadium. Well, it's the same way with marijuana and music for those in our culture today, and they should receive the same respect. The people of Washington deserve huge respect for passing a legalization law, Ventura told me. Now they have to keep pushing their politicians until they get the legalization law they need. Before we go this week, let me point you at a must-read story, also on Toke Signals. It's called Washington Citizens Initiative Does More to Protect Medical Marijuana Patients. And what it talks about is a possible solution to get out of this mess that we've been put in by the Washington legislature if you are a Washington state medical marijuana patient or a family member of one. So why hasn't the public heard about this solution? Well, there's a chance that you can educate yourself about it on Toke Signals this week. So check the story out. It tells about I-1372 and the effort led by Kirk Ludden to change state law. Hope you decide to join us again next week. Until then, stay lifted. See you then.